household debt in South Korea as one of the biggest risks to the local economy going forward.
Netflix's big hitter Squid Game may be seen as a big win for the South Korean entertainment industry, but it has also brought to light the country's darker side for the world to see. After enjoying decades of supercharged growth, South Korea has been left with a profoundly layered society where soaring house prices and social immobility fueled excessive borrowing. Also, issues like discrimination against women, migrant workers, and the elderly are deeply entrenched, and life is such a grind for many young people who give up on it altogether. Despite the shocking violence and eerie aesthetic that has made the series the most watched in Netflix history, Squid Game's portrayal of desperate contestants betting their lives for a chance to win 45.6 billion won, $39.1 million, while crazy rich VIPs watch on, contains many realistic elements true to the everyday struggle of Koreans. In this video, we'll be taking a scene-by-scene guide to some of those issues and how some of them relate to American society. Welcome to Finvize. Let me now tell you about the struggles of Koreans that were depicted in the Squid Game. Gaping Inequality. The reaction of Sung Gi-hun, player 456, the show's gambling addict protagonist, to his mother when she gave him 20,000 won, $17, epitomizes life for the poor in a country whose inequality is worse than Australia, Japan, and Spain. This scene happened in their semi-basement apartment in Sungmundong, the northern area of Seoul that is in direct geographic and economic contrast to the affluent Gangnam area. These small flats built half below ground level, which were also featured in the Oscar-winning film Parasite, have become the last resort for Korea's lower class, as apartment prices have jumped 70% in the past 5 years, pushing the average price of a house in Seoul beyond $1 million. The Banjiha homes have multiplied since the 1970s, after the South Korean government required all low-rise buildings to have basements as bunker spaces in the event of a military threat from the north. Then, as urbanization brought an increase of workers to Seoul with no space to live, the government legalized the renting out of these underground homes to ease the housing deficit. Banjiha homes have become a symbol of a gaping inequality that has become worse during the pandemic. The major reason behind this imbalance is the country's family-owned chaebol groups that control a large part of the economy, and the people who don't work for the company are largely shut out of economic advancement. Crippling household debt. Household debt in South Korea has surged in recent years to over 105% of its GDP, making it the highest in Asia. The top 20% of earners in the country have a net worth several times more than that of the bottom 20%, a disparity that has increased by half since 2017. There's been a rising debt-to-income ratio and a recent hike in interest rates, and this has left those who lack the resources to deal with unforeseen events like an illness, a sudden redundancy, or an even more precarious position.
친구들 여자애들은 취업을 보통 했고 남자애들은 이제 4학년 끝나고 취업 준비를 하고 있는데 엄청 어렵다고 하더라고요.
A recent report from the Gini Index measuring national wealth distribution puts South Korea within the same level as the UK, and in an even better place than the US. However, factors like global youth unemployment, soaring house prices, and the global pandemic have contributed to the recent increase in inequality experienced in recent years under the progressive government of Moon Jae-in. It wasn't only families that were putting themselves in debt to pay for education costs and housing.
South Korea, like other countries, has seen massive job losses because of the pandemic. Employment was down for a 7th month in a row.
It was said that the South Korean government announced new lending curbs to bring down debt among millennials. Young adults and those in their 30s are the most in debt relative to their income, as clearly depicted in the series. But these curbs and restrictions only led to some people turning to higher costs and higher risk lenders instead.
이거 이자가 뭐고 안 보인다니까요. 돈이 급하면 아무것도 안 보입니다.
This decision leaves many at the mercy of debt collectors, who wouldn't hesitate to let all hell loose in the event of defaulting on payments. While a few find themselves in a situation like Sung Gi-hun's, being chased by gangsters threatening to harvest their organs for sale, the burden of massive debt is a deepening social problem, as well as the leading cause of suicide in South Korea. The U.S. also finds itself in a similar state regarding the average household debt, with household debts soaring to nearly $15 trillion in the last quarter.
Lending standards in this market can go from the seemingly fairly responsible to pretty reckless.
The surge in credit card spending and home purchases was a contributor, which increased by $312 billion in the second quarter.
More Americans than not are living in debt. In fact, an alarming 53% of them are carrying credit card debt right now.
The current debt is at an all-time high, $812 billion more than what was owed at the end of 2019, even before the pandemic hit.
And the main risks to the wider economy here actually come through the lenders rather than the borrowers.
Players, winners, and losers, including certain characters in Squid Game, also represent South Korea's disadvantaged minorities and the consequences of socio-economic inequality for those groups. A factory owner's wicked exploitation of a migrant worker who entered the game is evidence of the hindrances to upward mobility for those from other parts of Asia. There were also features of North Korean defectors, who had to fight on many fronts to achieve both financial stability and social inclusiveness. The plight of elderly Koreans was reflected in the early episodes of the show by Player 1, a frail old man who was pushed aside by fellow participants. And when he, Oh Il-nam, volunteered to keep watch during the night of attacks, his offer was dismissed. In reality, people at that age find it impossible to find a decent job, meaning they have to deplete their savings or try to start a small food business, as the heartbroken mother of Cho Sang-woo did after her son disappeared. Most of these elderly barely earn enough to live. Also, the widespread gender discrimination and misogyny existing in Korea is a recurring theme in the show, depicted through the character of Han Min-yo. Although she has to use her sexuality to appeal to stronger male participants, she was ultimately left pleading to be included in their team. Her case resonates with women in Korea, where gender discrimination, although more hidden, still permeates institutions and everyday life. Furthermore, the series mocks Christianity by repeatedly expressing the growing change in the opinions of South Korea's fast development during the 1970s and 1980s, and its coincidental growth with the growth of the church at that time. However, the corruption among politicians and chaebol families who served as church elders while embezzling funds and setting up their private empires made some members opine that Christianity wasn't to serve the poor and oppressed, but glorify the rich, winning at the expense of others. Of course, this isn't something unique to South Korea alone. The characters of Squid Game, their troubles and their humanity resonate with the experience of societies around the world. Many economies similar to South Korea's are experiencing many of the same challenges, aggravated by the ongoing pandemic. The series brutally reminds the winners of each stage and show the global audience that those who succeed often do it off the backs of those who failed by the way of discrimination, weakness, poor judgment, or just bad luck. The show's last episode hints at the possibility of a second series, but even if it doesn't continue, Squid Game makes it evident that the deep-rooted issues it highlights are far from over. And with that, we've come to the end of today's video. What do you think about the issues we talked about in this video? Go on to the comments section below to share your thoughts. Also, kindly give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. You could also hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to be the first to get our awesome content. Thanks for watching and see you next time.